Goku's energy began spreading uncontrollably, stronger than anything any being could endure. The ground beneath his feet cracked, and the air around him became saturated with an indescribable, oppressive sensation. The tremors reached Beerus' planet, and Beerus froze suddenly, feeling a chill run through his body. He spoke with a voice filled with a mix of shock and concern. "What is this? This energy, it's shaking the entire universes." Whis, standing beside him and trying to maintain his calm demeanor, reflected something entirely different in his eyes. He spoke in a measured tone, but there was an unusual seriousness in his voice. "Lord Beerus, this is Goku's energy, but it's not as we've known it. It feels like something far greater. If we don't act now, everything could collapse." Meanwhile, on the edges of the universes, the tremors reached Zeno's palace. The entire palace shook in an unprecedented manner, freezing the guards in their places. Zeno, known for his innocent smile, stood up from his throne, his eyes filled with tension. The Grand Priest, who had never shown weakness before, had a momentary flicker of unease on his face. Zeno exclaimed in a loud, trembling voice, "What is happening? Why is everything shaking?" The Grand Priest, trying to steady his voice, replied, "This energy threatens the stability of the universes, Lord Zeno. It's coming from Goku." Zeno hesitated for a moment, then leaped from his spot and shouted with fear, "Goku? Why is he doing this? We must stop him immediately." The colossal energy Goku unleashed showed no signs of stopping. It expanded far beyond imagination, shaking not just Earth or the nearby universes but reaching every ruling god of destruction across the cosmos. In every universe, life halted for a few moments. Lords of Destruction and their followers stood in stunned silence. A feeling of dread crept into their hearts, as they realized this energy wasn't just a passing rage, it was a threat capable of obliterating entire universes. Back on Earth, Goku's friends gathered one by one. Vegeta, Piccolo, Gohan, they all stood before him, attempting to approach. But the violent aura of energy made every attempt seem impossible. The air was so dense it choked their breaths. Vegeta shouted with a voice full of anger and determination, "Goku! Snap out of it, you'll destroy us all." But Vegeta's shouts had no effect. Goku wasn't listening to anyone. He continued releasing his energy as he let out another roar, and the aura surrounding him flared up into a color no one had ever seen before. The roars suddenly ceased. Silence fell, but it was heavy and filled with fear. Everyone froze in their places, unable to move, as the aura around Goku slowly began to subside. One by one, the rulers of the universes stood frozen, their faces reflecting utter disbelief. Beerus, Whis, and all the Lords of Destruction, the fear was evident in their eyes. Amid the suffocating silence, no one could muster the courage to speak. The air was thick, as though any word uttered would only escalate the situation further. Everyone, from the rulers of the universes to Goku's closest friends, stood in absolute shock. Suddenly, Zeno appeared with the Grand Priest and his guards. Their arrival brought a new sense of awe and trepidation. Despite Zeno's small size and childlike appearance, everyone immediately bowed upon seeing him, except Goku, who stood unmoving, his gaze locked directly onto Zeno. Zeno, for the first time showing visible nervousness, spoke in a trembling voice. "Goku, what have you done? Why all this anger?" The Grand Priest stepped forward, attempting to speak calmly, but his voice betrayed a slight tremor. "This energy, I've never seen anything like it. What's happening here, Goku?" Slowly, Goku raised his head and looked at Zeno and the Grand Priest with eyes radiating power and fury. He spoke in a low voice, sharp as a blade. "Who killed my wife and my son, Goten?" The silence that followed those words was heavier than any explosion. Everyone exchanged shocked glances, as though they couldn't believe what they had just heard. No one knew about this tragedy, not even Goku's closest friends, who stood paralyzed in utter disbelief. Vegeta, visibly unsettled, exclaimed, "What? Who could have done this?" Zeno, more tense than ever, turned to the Grand Priest as if waiting for an answer. The Grand Priest remained silent for a moment before replying, "We've received no reports of this. This is the first time we're hearing about it." Goku's furious gaze swept across everyone, filled with suspicion and disbelief. The silence in the air only deepened his sense that the truth was being hidden from him. He shouted, his voice shaking the very ground beneath him. "None of you will speak? How can something like this happen without anyone knowing? You're the rulers of the universes. Aren't you supposed to know everything?" His eyes darted to each of them in turn, his face full of contempt. He raised his voice even further. "You know who did this. I'm certain, but you stay silent. Why? Are you afraid? Or were you part of it?" Everyone, from the rulers of the universes to Goku's closest friends, remained frozen, unable to respond. Zeno, his expression anxious, raised his hand slightly and spoke in a childlike yet firm voice. "Goku, stop. Anger won't bring you the truth. We're here to help you, but you must calm down first." Goku turned to Zeno, his gaze sharp as a blade, and said with shocking insolence, "Help? You can't even protect the universes you govern. My family was killed right under your noses, and none of you did anything. You're all useless." The words ignited the fury of Zeno's guards, who moved instantly without any command, as though they couldn't tolerate the insult. They rushed at Goku at a speed faster than sound, attacking him all at once. In a single moment, Goku raised his hand and unleashed an immense surge of energy. With one strike, his energy pierced through the guards' bodies and sent them flying. They hit the ground with such force that they lay motionless, like broken dolls. The scene left everyone frozen in shock. Beerus' eyes widened as he watched, and he muttered in a low voice filled with dread, This isn't the Goku we know." Whis observed with sharp eyes, though his tone remained disturbingly calm as he said, "This isn't just ordinary power. It's pure, unbridled rage, tearing everything around it apart." A deep sense of fear gripped everyone. Even Zeno, who rarely reacted to anything, stared at his fallen guards with wide eyes. Goku looked at the gathering, his aura growing even denser, and said in a defiant, furious voice, "Who wants to try their luck? If you think you can stop me, come forward." Silence fell again, heavier and more terrifying than ever. No one dared to speak or move, as though Goku had become an unstoppable force of nature. For the first time, Zeno's childlike face twisted into a scowl. Anger burned in his eyes as he raised his tiny hand toward Goku and declared in a sharp, authoritative tone, "If you don't calm down now, I will erase you from existence." Everyone froze, knowing Zeno never hesitated to use his absolute power. Yet Goku stood firm, his eyes blazing with fury, seemingly unfazed by the threat. Zeno waved his small hand, attempting to unleash his overwhelming power, but nothing happened. No light, no vanishing, no trace of energy. Everyone stared in disbelief at Zeno, who, for the first time, looked genuinely confused. Zeno stammered, looking at his hand in bewilderment. "What? Why isn't it working? What's happening?" Shock rippled through the crowd. Beerus whispered in a low voice, "Even Zeno's power can't affect him. This is impossible." From Beerus and Whis to Goku's friends, everyone began preparing to intervene. Even the rulers of the universes started moving toward Goku, despite their fear of facing him. But the Grand Priest, who had been observing silently, raised his hand, halting everyone. He spoke with a calm tone imbued with authority. "Everyone, stop. This isn't the solution. We can't confront Goku this way. His energy is now connected to something deeper than what we can see." Goku, who had been silent until now, let out a cold, sarcastic laugh and said, "Patience? Wisdom? None of you helped me when I needed you." But, he paused for a moment, his icy gaze sweeping the group before he turned toward Zeno and the Grand Priest. His voice was loud and brimming with defiance. 5 minutes. That's all I'll give you. Tell me now who did this, or I'll make all of you pay the price." The group gathered near the Grand Priest, avoiding direct eye contact with Goku. Zeno, looking visibly concerned, whispered to the Grand Priest, "We need to find a solution quickly. I won't let this spiral further out of control." The Grand Priest and the other rulers formed a circle, their voices low as they deliberated. Beerus spoke with tension in his tone. "This isn't ordinary energy. Clearly, whoever did this isn't from our universes." Whis added, his sharp eyes fixed on the Grand Priest. "But if an external force was involved, why didn't we sense it? That doesn't make any sense." The discussion continued, but no one had a clear answer. Suddenly, the Grand Priest lifted his head and said calmly, The answer might not lie here, but in another realm, beyond the universes we know. A foreign power must have intervened and caused this destruction. That's the only possibility. While everyone was preoccupied with calming the situation, Goku suddenly turned toward the ruins of his home. His eyes caught sight of something unusual. A small golden ring, eerily similar to those worn by the rulers of destruction, lying amidst a complex symbol etched into the ground. He bent down to pick it up, his expression shifting instantly. He whispered to himself, anger igniting once more. The rulers of destruction. Could it really be them? Meanwhile, the Grand Priest approached with Zeno and the rulers, attempting to reason with Goku. The Grand Priest spoke with a tone of wisdom. Goku, we have leads that confirm whoever did this is from outside our universes. Let us investigate further, and we may find the full answer. But Goku cut him off sharply, holding up the ring. There's no need. I know now. This ring belongs only to the rulers of destruction. It was you, wasn't it? His words struck like lightning, leaving everyone frozen in place. Goku's glare was sharp as a blade. Beerus raised his hands quickly and said, "Wait! This isn't what you think." But Goku wasn't listening. His voice boomed with fury. "You're hiding something, and I'll make you pay for it right now." Goku's accusatory gaze scanned the group, landing on Beerus, who looked more tense than the rest. Goku stepped closer with slow, heavy steps that seemed to shake the ground beneath him, then said in a sharp voice, "Beerus, you're from the Universe 7. If anyone knows anything, it's you. Speak now." Beerus froze, his face briefly betraying his worry before he regained composure. He responded in a low voice, "Goku, I don't know anything about this. I swear I wasn't involved in anything related to what happened to your family." But Goku wasn't convinced. He glanced at the ring in his hand and held it up to Beerus, his anger surging. "If you don't know anything, why did I find this? This ring belongs only to the rulers of destruction. Tell me the truth, now." Whis stepped forward, his usually calm tone carrying a sense of urgency. "Please, Beerus. If you know something, speak now before this gets worse for all of us." But Beerus remained silent, refusing to say a word. The silence was all the confirmation Goku needed. His voice was cold and deep as he said, "I hoped you'd be honest, but you've chosen the wrong path." In an instant, faster than even the rulers could react, Goku charged at Beerus, unleashing a massive blow that pierced straight through him. The energy he released was devastating, sending Beerus flying backward until he collided with the barrier of energy that the Grand Priest had created to protect the others. Beerus collapsed to the ground, his body trembling, blood dripping from his wounds. Everyone, from the rulers of destruction, Goku's friends, stood frozen in shock. None of them could have imagined anyone daring to attack Beerus in this way, least of all Goku. The other rulers of destruction, who had been silently observing the unfolding chaos, began to stir. Belmod stepped forward, his face contorted with anger and defiance. Breaking the heavy silence, he shouted, "Goku, you've crossed the line. Attacking Beerus isn't just reckless, it's treason. Do you think you're above all of us now?" Goku slowly turned to face Belmod, his burning eyes fixed on the god with a piercing glare. His voice, cold and dripping with suspicion, cut through the tension like a blade. "And you? Why are you so angry? Are you hiding something? Maybe you were part of what happened to my family." Belmod growled, pointing a finger at Goku. "How dare you accuse me? I have no interest in your family or your world." But Goku didn't back down. Instead, he narrowed his eyes further, his tone turning sharp and mocking. "You're all acting suspicious. Your silence, your anger, it only confirms my suspicions. Maybe all of you are involved. I'm giving you 1 minute to tell me the truth, or nothing will stop me." Rulers of destruction. Gods exchanged uneasy glances, some stunned, others visibly seething with anger. As the tension escalated, Goku raised his hand high into the air, his energy flaring violently. His aura now resembled a blazing sun, its raw power threatening to tear apart the entire realm. Suddenly, without any warning, an enormous explosion erupted, shaking the very fabric of existence. A blinding light filled the cosmos, forcing everyone to shield their eyes as the shockwave rippled across the realm. A chilling silence enveloped the battlefield. The sky was dark, and the ground trembled as if it were dying. Amid this destruction, Goku stood. His body was ablaze with a mysterious black energy, and his glowing, fiery eyes seemed like windows to an endless hell. His presence was like a living nightmare. The very air around him burned, creating whirlpools of energy that tore apart everything in their path. The scene was horrifying. The bodies of the rulers lay scattered across the ground, torn and bloodied. Their once terrifying powers, which had struck fear across universes, now seemed like faint memories. Beerus, the strongest among them, could barely lift his head. His face was marred with deep wounds, and his right arm was completely shattered. Struggling, he surveyed the battlefield around him. He saw Belmont unconscious near the edge of a massive crater, and Campo leaning against a rock, gasping for air, unable to stand. The other rulers were in no better condition, each suffering grievous injuries as though the explosion had stripped them even of the will to fight. Goku's friends and Beerus' broken body were the only ones who survived the blast. Zeno, the Grand Priest, and the attendants were shielded by a protective barrier of energy. Beerus muttered in a barely audible voice, "This isn't the Goku we know. This is something else." But Goku paid them no attention. He seemed to see only what lay ahead, as if the rulers, with all their grandeur, were nothing more than faint shadows in his world. His fists were clenched, and each breath he took resembled the roar of a volcano on the verge of erupting again. Despite his dire condition, Beerus attempted to stand. In a weak voice, he shouted, "Goku, enough! You've destroyed everything." As the heavy silence continued to hang over the battlefield, Goku advanced slowly toward the fallen rulers. His steps sounded like the tolling of bells heralding the end, and each step caused new cracks to spread across the already fractured ground. He stopped in front of Beerus, who was struggling to lift himself on his broken elbow. There was no mercy in Goku's eyes, only a cold, deadly indifference. In a deep, guttural voice, more like a hissed roar, Goku said, "Beerus, you've always called yourself the protector of Universe 7, but where were you when it needed you? When I was at my weakest, when my children were in danger?" Beerus, barely able to speak, said nothing. Goku leaned closer, his face mere inches from Beerus, and spoke in a low, anger-laden voice. "Lost control? Or have I finally seen the truth? You rulers, you have nothing but rules that serve yourselves. You've always hidden behind your authority, but look at yourselves now. You're nothing." Goku turned to face the other rulers, who were watching him with great difficulty, trying to compose themselves. Raising his hand, he pointed at them one by one. Then Goku said, "All of you were busy with your petty wars, while millions of lives were wiped out in your universes." Everyone was silent, unable to speak or move. The other rulers, despite hating the circumstances that brought them here, knew that admitting defeat to Goku would mean betraying their pride. Goku, standing amidst the debris and surrounded by the black energy swirling like a hurricane, said in a deep, angry voice, "If you refuse to acknowledge it," he continued in a tone filled with fury, "then I will make this universe remember the end of its rulers. Beerus, you have always been considered the strongest among us, so you'll be the first." Beerus stared at Goku, his eyes half closed due to the pain, but he didn't attempt to defend himself. Instead, he said in a quiet but exhausted voice, "If you're going to do it, Goku, do it. But remember who you truly are." Goku remained unaffected. He started forming a fireball, aiming it directly at Beerus. Everyone watched the moment in horror, as if time had frozen, while the fireball moved closer, ready to consume Beerus entirely. Suddenly, a flash of bright light appeared, intercepting the energy ball mid-air. Goku froze in place for a moment, unable to believe what he saw. It was Whis, standing there, his eyes filled with his usual calmness. But this time he seemed to be trying hard to contain an overwhelming force. In a split second, Whis exerted all his strength on the energy ball, crushing it within his barrier. The resulting explosion was massive, sending a shockwave that swept everything away in its path. Goku, who had taken a step back due to the blast, stood silently watching the scene. When the dust and energy cleared, all that remained of Whis was glowing ash, slowly fading into the air. Whis's final words echoed in Goku's mind like a whisper. "Goku, don't let your anger consume you. You are greater than this." Goku stood there, his eyes clouded with confusion, rage, and sadness, a mixture of conflicting emotions battling within him. The sacrifice made by Whis, although it stopped him for a moment, only deepened the abyss of anger and regret. But suddenly, another figure entered the battlefield, someone no one had expected to appear at this moment. Zeno, the almighty being who had been silently watching, and who had been patient until now, erupted in an unimaginable moment. His eyes glowed bright red, sparks of energy flying from them as if he were a being from the depths of hell. Unprecedented powers tore through the space around him. His body shimmered with energy, as if time itself froze in reaction to his transformation. Goku, overwhelmed by rage, stepped forward. His anger wasn't just toward the rulers anymore, it was also directed at Zeno for intervening in something he felt was spiraling out of control. Goku screamed, "Zeno!" But there was no time to think. When he saw Zeno's crushing attack directed at him, he felt the immense pressure overwhelm him. Goku moved his body at an incredible speed, trying to block the attack, but the energy unleashed by Zeno was beyond any power Goku had ever known. Massive explosions began to destroy the ground around him as he dodged the blasts that warped space. Goku felt something new coursing through his body. It wasn't his usual energy, but a mysterious power, deeply buried within him, that he had never discovered before. Goku was no longer an ordinary fighter. He had become an entirely different being. His power was greater than ever, as if the entire universe resonated with his immense energy. With one final, decisive strike, Goku unleashed a massive beam of energy that hit Zeno directly, leaving him lying on the ground, paralyzed. After all his defenses had collapsed, Zeno's final scream echoed across the space before he fell to the ground, unable to rise, as the entire universe witnessed the decisive end. As destruction spread through the space, the eyes of Goku's friends were fixed on him in disbelief. Vegeta stood stunned, his eyes unable to believe what they were seeing, while Beerus, who had always doubted Goku's potential, was speechless. Even the remaining attendants, who had witnessed this incredible transformation, were completely overwhelmed. As everyone watched Goku standing in the middle of the battlefield, they could only acknowledge one fact. Goku had reached the pinnacle of power, a power none of them could have imagined, not even Goku himself. This was not just a victory over Zeno, but a defining transformation in the history of the universe. While everyone was still in shock over Zeno's crushing defeat, the remaining attendants began moving chaotically toward the Grand Priest, who was watching the situation with a deadly calm. The attack on Zeno filled them with fear, as if they had finally realized that Goku, whom they once considered just an ordinary fighter, had become something far beyond their ability to confront. They disappeared behind the Grand Priest like fleeing rabbits, hiding from Goku's destructive power. Then, in the midst of this chaos, a hysterical laugh erupted. It wasn't from Goku, but from the Grand Priest. The laugh was filled with insanity, as if mocking everyone. The sound grew sharper and louder until Goku felt something strange creeping into his heart. That sound wasn't just laughter, it was a psychological tremor that created deep confusion in his mind. Goku, despite his immense power, felt a wave of unease rising in his chest, making him wonder what the Grand Priest had planned. At that moment, the Grand Priest reached into his pocket and pulled out a strange capsule with a unique design, its light shining in the darkness. Goku didn't have time to focus on the capsule before the Grand Priest pressed its button, causing a massive explosion in the middle of the battlefield. The ground shook, stones flew into the air, and debris scattered in all directions. Amidst the smoke and dust, something strange began to appear. It was as if something from another world had forced its way into this one. In the middle of the arena stood two massive coffins surrounded by a strange glow, emitting a mysterious light. A mysterious force began to emanate from the coffins, as if they held terrible secrets. This was the moment that changed everything. Everyone stared at the coffins with eyes full of awe, and all attention turned to Goku, who stood silent, immersed in waiting for what was to come. It was a turning point, the moment that would decide everyone's fate. The silence following the coffin's explosion was unnatural. Time seemed to stop for a moment, and the light emanating from the coffins was so bright that everyone felt trapped within a field of mysterious energy. The light emitted strange colors, blending between light blue and silver, until the very ground shook invisibly. Everything around them moved with an unnaturally slow rhythm. Goku, standing at the center of the event, felt something unusual seeping into his body. It was as though an unknown force was trying to penetrate him, something deeper and farther than any power he had ever encountered. Every sensation in his body pulsed with caution, and every step he took seemed to lead him into the unknown. His eyes never left the coffins from which the strange light emanated. One of the assistants, standing next to the high priest, silently observed what was happening. He exchanged glances with his father, who appeared more confused than ever. Before anyone could respond, Father's finally opened her mouth and asked, "What's inside these coffins?" Daishinkin, always cautious with his words, took a deep breath and answered in a hesitant voice, as though bearing a heavy burden. "Inside these coffins, there are ancient beings, ones that date back to a time long ago. Millions of years have passed since they were sealed within them. These beings are unlike any creatures we have known. Some are capable of erasing everyone here with a single glance, immense, unimaginable power. They are creatures whose minds are driven by a single purpose, destruction." Goku, who had been standing nearby, was taken aback by this revelation. As the high priest continued, "The beings in these coffins are not ordinary beings. They were imprisoned by Zeno's late ancestor after being deceived in the past and cast into these cursed coffins. Since then, they have been there, asleep, waiting for the moment when their restraints are broken." Goku, more curious than ever, decided to move closer to the coffins, ignoring the danger that the creatures within them might pose. But to everyone's surprise, he began to flee at Daishinkin's command. While the group of assistants withdrew behind the priest, Goku remained in place, listening intently to what was being said, his eyes fixed on the coffins. The moment the high priest and his assistants vanished, Goku stood there, his mind seemingly on the verge of exploding with questions. The arena had emptied, leaving only the echoes of heavy breaths reverberating within the ruins. Goku struggled to breathe, a strange feeling washing over him as if all his power had drained away in an instant. His eyes were fixed on the coffins, which were now glowing brightly, while his mind screamed in an attempt to understand what was happening. As everyone else collapsed from the overwhelming force, Goku nearly fell to the ground. The accelerating light from the coffins began to take on an enormous form, filling the space around them. The ground itself cracked and collapsed under the weight of this strange event. It was as though an ancient force, dormant for millions of years, was awakening. Goku whispered, gasping for air, "Why am I losing my power?" His mind raced in an attempt to comprehend what was going on, while the glowing light from the coffins grew even stronger. The real surprise came when massive shapes began to emerge from within the coffins. Goku, barely able to stand from shock and suffocating in the pressure, whispered, "Who are they?" As the glowing shapes became clearer, they started to form at an increasing pace. Despite Goku's weakness, his eyes never left the figures coming from within. Something unnatural was happening before him. Were they enemies more powerful than anything he had ever encountered? Goku, standing in stunned silence, breathed heavily, as though his heart might explode, unable to transform when he saw what emerged from the coffins. Goku had never felt such fear before. His heart was pounding violently, and his hands trembled uncontrollably. His eyes were fixed on the coffins that had erupted, releasing thick smoke and an unbearable energy. With every passing moment, he felt the air around him grow heavier, as if his very presence had become a burden on this cursed place. The blinding light began to fade gradually, revealing two massive beings, like legends from an ancient time. The first had a fierce appearance, with thick, gray hair billowing like smoke and prominent fangs gleaming in the darkness. His blood-red eyes and voice resembled a roar that could tear the skies apart. The second was calmer, but his aura was far more imposing. His body was surrounded by a faint blue glow, and his eyes shone like the very essence of death itself. The first spoke with a voice that shook the entire area. At last, after all these years, the second responded with cold disdain. Silence. Chorus. I never expected to see you here again. Chorus. That name carried a terrifying weight. Goku felt every fiber of his being screamed to flee, but he was paralyzed. His friends, all of them lay motionless on the ground. Piccolo, Vegeta, Gohan, even Beerus were all sprawled out as if drained of every ounce of energy. The second being, whose name was now clear, Arcados, gazed at Chorus with utter contempt. Tell me, Chorus, what are you doing here? Didn't I kill you millions of years ago? Chorus let out a savage laugh, one that made the surrounding rocks explode. You're the one talking about killing, Arcados? I'm the one who killed you. I destroyed everything you had and crushed you mercilessly. Arcados, who had initially appeared composed, suddenly lost his temper and roared with a voice that shook the ground. You fool, Chorus! Don't you see what's happening here? We've been deceived, both of us. Chorus paused, staring at Arcados with blazing eyes. For a brief moment, the anger subsided, replaced by astonishment. Deceived? What do you mean? Arcados, his voice now low and dripping with hatred, added, Grand Zeno's ancestor. This was all his game. He made us fight to the death, then sealed us in these cursed coffins. We were nothing but his pawns. Chorus was silent for a moment, then erupted into maniacal laughter. His laugh was so overpowering that Goku felt as though the ground beneath him was splitting apart. Goku watched in silence, consumed by confusion and fear. His heart raced like never before, and his thoughts burned with questions. These beings, their power is unimaginable. If even Grand Zeno's ancestor deceived them, what does that mean? And how can I possibly face them? But suddenly, Chorus turned his gaze toward Goku, smiling a wicked, mocking grin. Look, Arcados, we have a guest here. It seems he's been enjoying the show. Arcados, who had so far ignored Goku, slowly turned his head. His eyes locked with Goku's, and it felt as though death itself was staring at him. Goku felt his body betray him. Even the energy he had been trying to summon vanished entirely. Chorus approached with heavy steps, the ground trembling beneath his feet, and said in a dark, ominous tone, Are you here to witness the end of this universe? The destruction intensified. The entire place shook violently, walls cracking as the energy of the two beings surged uncontrollably. Chorus and Arcados exchanged looks filled with rage and contempt, but they agreed on one thing: this universe will not survive. Suddenly, the area erupted with immense energy. Goku fell to his knees as the blinding light emanating from the two beings made everything around him disappear. His eyes were wide with awe and fear, and he could only think of one question. What is happening now? Goku, struggling to breathe, barely managed to lift his head amidst the surrounding destruction. His eyes were filled with fear, but then he heard a familiar voice. Gohan's voice. Gohan, who was trying to rise with great difficulty, crawled toward his father, attempting to check on him, but before he could reach him, he suddenly froze in place, as if time itself had stopped. His eyes met Chorus's, the being who embodied terror itself. Chorus smiled a deadly, wicked smile. How fragile this world is. Gohan didn't stand a chance. In an instant, his body began to crack as though it were brittle glass, shattering into thousands of pieces that vanished into the air. Goku screamed with a pain he had never felt before. Gohan, tears streamed down Goku's face, burning hot as they fell. Watching his son vanish before his eyes was enough to break what little remained of his spirit. Goku, the symbol of strength and resilience, began to shake violently from grief and fury. Arcados, who had been observing the scene in silence, spoke coldly. How pathetic. You mortals still think you have a chance. But Goku, amidst the pain and rage, began to think. His thoughts were torn between the past and the present, and the impossible choices he now faced. How did it come to this? How had he caused this chaos? His memory drifted back to the moment he lost his wife, Chi-Chi. The rage that consumed him then was enough to shatter the very laws of nature, forcing him into that cursed form, the flame state. That rage was what brought about the current catastrophe. Goku, barely able to stand, felt guilt tearing at his soul, yet at the same time, he knew he had no other choice. The creatures before him could not be confronted using conventional means. All he knew now was that he had to fight, even if it meant resorting to the form that cost him his control. His eyes burned with fury as he shouted, struggling to rise. "No! I won't stop here. I won't let this end this way." But the true disaster began when he looked at Chorus, the creature who killed Gohan. Goku knew he couldn't face his power directly, but his anger was too overwhelming to contain. Chorus smirked mockingly and said with derision, "And what will you do now, warrior? Face us knowing you don't stand a chance?" Goku closed his eyes for a moment, trying to gather his strength, but he couldn't ignore the blood boiling within him. He knew that transforming into the flame state meant losing control and might result in the destruction of everything, but he had no other option. Amid this internal struggle, his body began to ignite gradually. The flames that had been locked away within him began to seep out, and the ground beneath his feet started to melt. Goku knew this power wasn't just a weapon, it was a curse. Arcados, watching the transformation, raised an eyebrow with interest. "Oh, it seems this mortal has something worth watching." Chorus laughed loudly. "It won't change a thing, no matter what he does. His end will be the same as his son's." Goku opened his eyes, glowing like embers, and shouted with all his might, "I will not forgive you, even if it destroys me. I will destroy you both." The entire place began to tremble violently. The ground cracked further as Goku prepared for his full transformation. His body erupted in searing flames as he stood firmly against Chorus. The scene was like a battle between the elements themselves, the blazing fire that lit up the area and the deadly ice that froze everything around it. Chorus began to approach, his heavy footsteps shaking the ground. The devilish grin on his face grew larger with every step. "Look at me, fool. Let me put an end to your misery." Goku stepped back, readying himself for the attack, but suddenly, everything around him froze. The walls, the ground, even the air itself became unbearably cold. Chorus, with a victorious smirk, said mockingly, "You won't last long. Even fire cannot endure my curse." But as Chorus moved closer and touched the flames, he was stunned. The fire surrounding Goku's body resisted him, as if the curse of ice had no effect. Chorus looked at his outstretched hand, which began to melt under the intense heat of the flames, and said in shock, "What? How are you resisting my curse?" Goku, suddenly realizing the secret to his survival, roared in anger, "My flames aren't just power, they are my very life. I won't let you touch anyone else again." Chorus, growing more enraged, unleashed waves of ice toward Goku. The waves were so powerful that they froze the ground for miles, but they couldn't reach him. The flames surrounding Goku's body blocked everything, growing brighter and more intense. Goku lunged at Chorus, aiming a powerful blow. The clash between them was enough to shatter the ground beneath their feet. Chorus tried to touch him again, but every time he got close, the flames burned him even more. But something changed. Goku's heat began to weaken gradually. Chorus, noticing this, laughed loudly and said mockingly, "You're finally breaking. No one can withstand me for long." Goku, feeling his strength fading, struggled to maintain his stance as his body grew weary and the protective flames around him began to dim. Chorus, noticing the perfect opportunity, lunged at him with terrifying speed, aiming for a decisive, fatal blow. "I won't let you!" Goku yelled, attempting to evade the attack. Suddenly, a mysterious figure appeared, cloaked in a black robe, with a radiant aura shrouding their features. In a calm yet commanding tone, the figure looked at Chorus and said, "Stop where you are." Goku lay on the ground, breathing his last breaths. His body was exhausted, and his soul burdened with fear. Chorus was about to deliver the final blow when suddenly, An indescribable energy tore through the battlefield, freezing everyone in their places. Goku felt a strange shiver run through his body, and his eyes widened as he saw an intruder standing in the middle of the battlefield. The figure looked like an older and more majestic version of Zeno, but his features were imbued with mystery and awe. Kurus stared at the intruder in shock and horror. "No, it can't be you. How did you escape? You were sealed away forever." Arkados tried to steady himself, but his trembling voice betrayed his fear. "Kurus, this is not the time for recklessness. That's Zeno's grandfather, the one who sealed us in those coffins millions of years ago." But rage blinded Kurus. He charged at Zeno's grandfather, ignoring his partner's warning. He screamed with despair, "I'm tired of your restraints. This time, I'll kill you with my own hands." With a chilling calm, Zeno's grandfather raised his hand. In an instant, a mysterious light enveloped Kurus. His screams began to fade as he was absorbed back into the coffin, as though he had been nothing more than a fleeting dream. Arkados froze momentarily, then quickly stepped back, his eyes widening with each step. He whispered in a hoarse voice, "I'm not staying here, not when I know what could happen to me." And with that, he disappeared into the unknown, leaving the battlefield empty except for Zeno's grandfather and Goku. Goku, who had watched all of this in stunned silence, felt terror gripping him. Who is this being? How could he defeat terrifying creatures like Kurus and Arkados so effortlessly? The gaze of Zeno's grandfather pierced Goku like an arrow. Then he spoke in a deep and commanding voice. "You've seen enough here. It's time for you to learn the truth they've hidden from you all this time." Before Goku could respond, the battlefield was flooded with a bright light that engulfed him completely. In the blink of an eye, he found himself in a strange place, unlike anything he had seen before. The atmosphere was serene, but Goku was not alone. Standing before him was Zeno's grandfather, the man who had saved him, radiating an indescribable aura of majesty. Beside him stood an elderly man with a calm and wise expression, exuding an aura of profound knowledge, and a young warrior with sharp eyes and an unbreakable will, clearly a seasoned fighter. Goku, still shaken and afraid, struggled to stand. He looked at them all and asked, "Who are you? Where am I? And why are you here?" The old man smiled gently, stepped forward, and said, "Welcome to this world, Goku. I am your new mentor, and this young man is my student who will assist in training you. Your journey has only just begun." Goku, trying to process the situation, whispered to himself in a tense voice, "Zeno's grandfather, a new mentor. Why? What's waiting for me now?" Lying on the ground, Goku began to see the picture slowly become clearer. Zeno's grandfather approached him with confident steps and said with a resolute voice, "Goku, if you want to face the Grand Priest and his sons with their endless tricks, your current power won't be enough. Even with your flame form, you're far from the required level." Feeling weak, Goku looked up at him with eyes filled with anger and doubt. "And what do you suggest? I can't even stand right now. How am I supposed to fight them?" Zeno's grandfather smiled, as if he had been waiting for that question. "There is only one transformation that can give you the strength you need. Something no being in this universe has ever achieved before. It's a transformation that can only be attained through unyielding will and unbreakable determination, the eternal flame. A power that transcends time and space. This is the reason I chose you for this mission." Goku was shocked by the name. He felt that this transformation was more than just another level of power. It was tied to something deeper, something that demanded sacrifices he wasn't yet ready to make. The wise old man standing beside the young warrior intervened, saying, "Goku, the eternal flame isn't just a transformation. It requires you to face all your fears, all your anger, and turn them into pure energy. It's not just about physical strength, but also about the strength of your spirit. If you're ready, we'll begin your training immediately." Meanwhile, in Zeno's palace, the Grand Priest appeared calm, but that calm hid a slight unease despite his apparent victory. One of his sons, who seemed triumphant, cautiously approached him and said, "Father, after all that's happened, it seems we've finally gotten rid of Goku." The beings released from the coffins did what we couldn't do ourselves. We're safe now, aren't we? The Grand Priest replied in a deep voice filled with confidence. Goku was undoubtedly dead. Those creatures are a force to be reckoned with. If he could have survived them, he would have done so already. There's no need to worry. He's finished now. But one of the Grand Priest's more cautious sons felt uneasy and said, "Father, what if Goku is still alive?" The priest replied with reassurance, "There's no need for exaggeration. These beings we unleashed from the coffins were designed specifically for this purpose, with strength amplified by great deception. Goku wasn't capable of facing them." Despite the reassuring words of the Grand Priest, a cloud of unease hung over some of the faces. The sons began whispering amongst themselves about the potential danger and how they might not be safe if other surprises were to emerge. But the priest, who had been closely observing all of them, spoke. "Do not let these thoughts take hold of you. It's over." In the hidden world, Zeno's grandfather ordered the elder to heal Goku, channeling a mysterious energy into his body. After the process was complete, the elder stood slowly, as though nothing had happened. Goku began to feel a powerful surge of energy flowing within him. The elder, calm and steady as still water, looked at him with a piercing gaze and said, "Goku, if you are to fight the Grand Priest and his sons, you must be stronger than you've ever been. The power you once had was chaotic. Now it's time for change. This young man here, my student, will train you. He knows what it takes." Goku raised his head slightly, his voice still shaky, but he began to feel something new inside him, an energy he had never experienced before. Before he could fully grasp what was happening, Zeno's grandfather stood before him, his face devoid of expression, as though he were about to reveal something grave. Zeno's grandfather, in a calm yet tense voice, "Goku, there is something you must know. Something that will change everything." Goku looked at him, his heart pounding faster. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he felt the time had come to learn the truth. Zeno's grandfather, in a low voice, "I was the one who killed your wife and son." The words struck Goku like a lightning bolt, freezing his body and widening his eyes in shock. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. Goku, in furious disbelief. "What? How dare you say that? Why? Why would you do that?" Zeno's grandfather, calmly, "I did it for the sake of your planet. The Grand Priest had a plan to kill you in a cruel way. He intended to implant a parasite into your wife and son to murder you in your sleep." Goku's rage boiled within him, threatening to explode. He couldn't believe that the man he had respected and considered a mentor was behind such a tragedy. He demanded answers in anger. "Why does the priest want me dead? Why?" Zeno's grandfather, firmly, "Because he doesn't want anyone to get close to Zeno except himself. Zeno admires you, Goku, and the priest wanted to eliminate you by any means necessary." The ground seemed to shake beneath Goku's feet. The revelations were a barrage of shocking truths he wasn't prepared for. With each answer, his anger only grew. Goku, gritting his teeth, "And what about my wife and son? How dare you kill them? Did you know they would be targeted?" Zeno's grandfather, calmly but with a sorrowful look, "Didn't you notice the strange mark on the ground? That mark transported your wife and son to a hidden, safe place. We placed a special aura on the rulers of destruction to make it seem like they were the ones who killed them, but in reality, they've been safe all along. They're alive now." A wave of relief began to wash over Goku's heart, but it didn't extinguish his anger. He knew there was still more to understand. Goku, angrily but searching for answers. "And why couldn't you handle this yourself? Why did you need me for this?" Zeno's grandfather, with a voice full of regret, "I cannot touch anyone in the palace or enter it. There is a fundamental rule in this place. If I attempt to touch anyone, I will perish. That's why I needed your help. You are the only one capable of stopping them." Goku felt conflicted, still trying to process why this secret had been hidden from him for so long. But as Zeno's grandfather spoke, something began to shift within Goku. There was a glimmer of hope on the horizon, yet his anger toward the man before him remained strong. Goku, with puzzled eyes. But how can I trust you after all of this? How can I believe you? At that moment, Zeno's grandfather made a quick gesture, casting a light spell into the air. Suddenly, an image of Goku's wife and son appeared, safe and sound, playing together in a peaceful garden far from any danger. Zeno's grandfather, in a gentle voice. Look, they are in a safe place now. This is the only thing I could do, for you and for them. Goku, staring at the scene before him, felt some relief seep into his heart, but the anger within him wouldn't fully fade. The truth was heavy, and his path only seemed to grow more complicated with each revelation. Goku, in a low voice. I've been deceived, but I can never forgive you. I will take vengeance on everyone. Everything was shrouded in mystery, but Goku knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. After Goku was convinced by Grand Zeno's words and his goal became clear, he began his new training with the young warrior. Goku, who had finally felt a power he had never known before, endured intense and rigorous training with the warrior who introduced him to new dimensions of combat. This training seemed designed not just to shape him as a fighter but as an unstoppable force. The new transformation Goku acquired through this training was called Heavenly Flame Transformation. An extraordinary power that granted him incredible speed, flexibility, and heightened awareness. Meanwhile, in the Dark Palace, the Grand Priest began to sense something strange. Goku's energy had suddenly vanished, and when he learned that Chorus had returned to his coffin while Arcados had been released, his fear grew. His eyes widened in shock as he nervously wondered. Grand Priest, thinking aloud, could it be? Is Grand Zeno still alive? If he is the one releasing the coffins, it means Goku still has hope. Panic began to ripple through the hearts of everyone present. The Grand Priest felt as if the lifeline was slipping from his grasp. He had believed Goku was dead, but the signs suggested otherwise. At the same time, in another realm where Goku was training, he was undergoing an extraordinary transformation. Goku reached an advanced stage of his new form, becoming more in tune with his power. As he trained with the young warrior, the ground beneath them erupted from the sheer force Goku unleashed. A radiant flame enveloped him, covering his body in heavenly fire and releasing all his suppressed power. Goku, pausing for a moment with a determined gaze. I've waited long enough for this day. I won't let the Grand Priest and his sons live after everything they've done. I'll uproot them, no matter the cost. Goku's words were filled with anger and determination, leaving no doubt that he would not back down from his mission. The wise mentor looked at Goku and said, "The power you've reached is immense, but remember, controlling it is the key to victory. If you lose control, you'll become the greatest danger to yourself." Goku nodded, igniting his fiery aura. It was unlike anything seen before, a profound glow and a torrent of flames as if a living ocean of fire surrounded him. Grand Zeno, pointing to the horizon, the Grand Priest and his sons are watching everything. If you are ready, now is the moment to begin. Seek vengeance, but tread carefully. One of the Grand Priest's sons, fearfully, "But father, his energy disappearing like this isn't natural. Perhaps he's found a way to survive." If Goku is alive, it also means Grand Zeno is still lurking in the shadows. The Grand Priest stood in anger, his gaze foreboding. Grand Zeno? If he's alive, then things are more dangerous than I anticipated. Only he has the power to thwart our plans. Another son, with a voice full of fear, "And if he returns, we may face the same fate as Whis." Tension grew among the sons. Some were consumed by fear, while others were eager to destroy Goku and Grand Zeno before they became a real threat. Grand Zeno stood before Goku, placing a hand on his shoulder. His serious gaze was filled with confidence and resolve. "Goku, the time has come. Remember, the Grand Priest will no longer underestimate you, but you must not underestimate his power either. I'll use my power to transport you directly to the palace. That's where your true battle begins." Goku nodded firmly. A beam of blue light shot from Grand Zeno's hand, enveloping Goku entirely. In an instant, Goku vanished, leaving behind a faint trace of glowing energy. Inside the palace, the Grand Priest and his son's tension. The Grand Priest could feel Goku's energy rapidly approaching. Standing in the center of the Grand Hall, his body trembled slightly with anger and tension. His sons watched him nervously. One of the sons, "Father, could it really be Goku?" The Grand Priest, in an angry voice. "Yes, it's him. Somehow, he survived. It seems those beings weren't enough to stop him, but I've prepared a contingency plan." The Grand Priest extended his hand, revealing an ancient ring surrounded by a foreboding black aura. One of the sons, "That ring, it's forbidden. Didn't the ancient Zeno say using it would bring catastrophe?" The Grand Priest, with a sinister smile. "Catastrophe? Perhaps. But I will not allow Goku or Grand Zeno to destroy my plans. I'll use everything at my disposal to stop him." Slowly, the Grand Priest slipped the ring onto his finger. The moment the ring touched his hand, a massive wave of malevolent energy swept through the entire palace. The ground began to tremble, and cracks formed in the walls. The Grand Priest's body started to transform. He grew larger, his muscles swelling to unnatural proportions. His eyes turned a deep crimson, and the aura surrounding him thickened into a dense black cloud, like absolute darkness. His sons recoiled in fear, and one of them whispered, "What has he become? Is this truly our father?" The Grand Priest, in a deep, menacing voice. "Now, let's see if Goku can stand against me in this state." At the grand gates of the palace, Goku appeared, hesitating as he felt the ominous aura permeating the air. A chill ran down his spine. Goku, whispering, "What is this energy? It's pure evil." "Grand Priest, what have you done?" He pushed the gates open and entered cautiously. The moment he stepped into the Grand Hall, an overwhelming wave of malevolent energy struck him like a hammer. Looking ahead, he saw the transformed Grand Priest standing there, his sheer size and power making the entire room feel as though it was under his control. The Grand Priest, in a terrifying voice. "Goku, I knew you would come, but this time, you won't leave alive. What have you done? This energy. I've never felt anything this evil before." The Grand Priest laughed mockingly. "It doesn't matter. All that matters is destroying you, and Grand Zeno." The hall began to quake violently as the Grand Priest launched his first attack. The strike was swift and powerful. Forcing Goku to dodge with great difficulty, he countered with a blast of his new fiery aura, but the Grand Priest's malevolent energy absorbed the flames as if it were a ravenous beast. Goku, in a low voice, "This is tougher than I expected." The Grand Priest, "Is this the end, Goku? Is this the best you can do? How disappointing. I expected more." Goku moved with unimaginable speed, delivering strikes the Grand Priest couldn't keep up with. Each attack was so devastating that every blow left a radiant mark in the hall. The Grand Priest attempted to retaliate, but his malevolent energy began to wane, as if it was dissolving in the face of the purity of the blue flame. The balance of power had shifted, and Goku's resolve burned brighter than ever. The Grand Priest, once the embodiment of terror, now faced the light of a force he could not defeat. The Grand Priest, screaming in rage, "No! This is impossible! My evil power cannot be defeated." Goku, preparing for his final attack, "This is the price for all the crimes you've committed. Your end has come." Goku unleashed a colossal fiery attack toward the Grand Priest. massive explosion that filled the palace with a pure blue light. When the light faded, the Grand Priest lay defeated on the ground, his evil aura completely gone. The Grand Priest's sons, who had been watching the battle from afar, were paralyzed with fear. They knew that challenging Goku now would be suicidal. One of the sons, kneeling before Goku, "Please, forgive us. We were only following our father's orders. We never imagined it would come to this." Goku, his energy now calm, looked at them with a mix of anger and pity. "What you've done is unforgivable, but I am not a killer without reason. I'll leave it to you to atone for your crimes." Suddenly, Goku sensed a familiar energy outside the palace. It was Grand Zeno's elder relative, waiting just beyond the door. Goku remembered the elder's words. He could only enter the palace with permission from its inhabitants. Goku instructed one of the aides to open the grand doors and welcome him inside. The palace's massive gates creaked open, revealing Grand Zeno's elder stepping in with calm, measured steps. The Grand Priest's sons moved aside respectfully to let him pass. Grand Zeno's elder, with a gentle smile, "Goku, you've proven not only that you're the strongest but, more importantly, that you are the wisest and most just." Goku, puzzled, "What do you mean?" Grand Zeno's elder, "From this moment on, you shall be the new ruler of this world. You have shown that you alone can balance power with mercy. This palace now belongs to you." Moments later, the elder used his power to summon Goku's wife and son to the palace. It was an emotional moment as Goku ran to embrace the family he thought he had lost forever. Goku, his voice full of joy, "I'm so happy to have you back. Now we can finally live in peace." Friends and allies soon gathered at the palace, transforming it into a new home filled with life and happiness. Laughter echoed through the halls that once bore witness to darkness, now a beacon of hope under Goku's rule.